that we have had that made it to the headlines of our newspapers, speaking politically. And majorly this week we have been on the party primaries. We saw the ODM party primaries, and towards the end of the week on Friday we had the Jubilee party primaries that were bungled, shambolic, chaotic, all those names that we have been using on it. But they have a second chance to redeem themselves next week. We will be having that conversation. Let's now just take a look at the major headlines, major political headlines we had this week. Madeka, do we have anything on our board? All right, before we get into that, gentlemen, just as I mentioned, your quick survey of the whole process, both ODM and Jubilee last week.
The preceding, thank you for the opportunity. Yes. The preceding fortnight, ODM looked quite shambolic. It looked like a battlefield where destruction of property, attacks on individuals, obstruction of fair play was the order of the day. Then there came the bravado from Jubilee that look at how hopeless these people are.
The mother of all chaos?
Yeah, then what we saw actually cannot, from a ruling coalition, I mean, it will not be fair to give them a mark of 2 out of 10. That is still very generous. So what I expected from them was, after the bravado and after the various statements by the head of secretariat, was that he would have what the primary indication that it was going to be chaotic was. There was no roadmap about how, what, when would be done. What there were instructions about individual small procedures, about you do this there, do this there, but there was no direction on how to get there. So as a result, everybody took their own route to go there. As a result, the secretariat was issuing statements that were rather bold but empty, and the aspirants were issuing their own guidelines, and the voters were demanding basically a sound organization for them to cast their votes.
All right, we're getting deeper into that, Prof.
Yes.
Your quick analysis, Brian.
Yeah, actually from the look of things, from the way the Jubilee Secretariat started assuring the country and especially the supporters of Jubilee that all will be glossy, all will be seamless, in terms of preparations that they had took into account, giving us, those 5, measures, security measures that they had put in place, only known by 5 people. And from the way they used to, articulate issues, you could think that these nominations will be conducted in heaven, where there will be any issue coming out as far as disgruntlement is concerned. But to the chagrin of the supporters, it came to be absolutely something different. It was a total debacle. But again, we also have to understand that as they acknowledge themselves, especially the top brass in terms of the management of Jubilee Party, they acknowledge that they really underestimated the magnitude of the work that was ahead of them in terms of preparations. They underprepared, as they said, or the president would want to assure us, but they were not really not prepared, but they were underprepared, as he told us. But again, we also ask ourselves the big questions, really, whether, although these are something that perhaps I might be preempting, whether really political parties are up to the task in terms of conducting their own political party nominations. I think that Akisa is a debate for another day, but as of now, I can say they are not ready for the task.
How about the ODM?
Quite shambolic, as he said it. We thought they were shambolic, but came Jubilee, now it became more shambolic. But again, we also want to say that I don't want to say that I can compare both of them, because actually ODM was just doing it in piecemeals, 1 county or 2 counties that ago. But Jubilee did a sort of wholesale sort of affair. And if there were chaos in two counties which are conducting their affairs, that was Busia and Kajiado at the same time, and if that was also brewing some issues, suppose they were also doing 21 counties like Jubilee at the same time, it would have been mother of all, chaos, I suppose.
But does that not mean that ODM knows what nominations are like, and they would not be ambitious to put 21 counties at a go.
By the way, they knew, and that's why they did not want to venture into that. But again, if you look at the nature of the issues that came out, they were quite different. ODM had issues to do with numbers which were exaggerated, but ODM had issues to do with logistics, where ballot papers were not printed enough, and that to me would have been the least issue that we would have expected from a party which is so much bankrolled in terms of finances and resources. Coming up with less than 50% of the ballot papers being printed, that means that they really, as they told us, they really underestimated the whole process.
Dismiss.
Well, three things come to play. Number one, in Kenya, wherever there is any program or process taking place, the people managing the process always want to make money. When you look at the ODM primaries and Jubilee primaries, they would have been conducted in a superior manner if the commercial interests had taken a backseat. Like, for instance, when you look at Jubilee as a political party and their nominations, you know a polling station, say, has got 1,000 registered voters. Why would you want to print 200 ballots? Why would you imagine that you're only going to have a 20% turnout? Two things come out. Either you want to save money by printing 20% and you save the other 80%, which you misappropriate, or maybe as the party primaries are going on, you are negotiating a deal to buy a property somewhere. Or number two, you immediately want to steal elections. Because, Akisa, look at a scenario.
Yeah.
If I'm competing against Professor Tumbo and our agents go to a polling station, we know you have 1,000 registered voters and you only have 200 ballots. Immediately my agents and these agents will start asking, where is the balance of 800? Where is it located? Where is it situated? So when I saw Raphael Tuju saying that from by-elections and other party primaries before, the voter turnout on average is 20%, so we decided to print 50%, I thought that was a bit shocking and unplanned for, actually unacceptable. And I thought maybe Tuju was under a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
But not the following day when the president confirmed that, in fact, the problem was printing fewer ballots, that really is worrying. And then still back on Jubilee, one wonders where Kenya is going. Because for the first time in any democratic process, the aspirants call off elections. The aspirants call off party primaries. I mean, in Embu, you had Cecily Mbarire and the governor saying these primaries are not taking place.
Mandogo.
And then I saw a few minutes later, now, Raphael Tuju coming after the horse has bolted and saying, wait, aspirants have no authorities to, cancel or nullify the party primaries. And then you go to ODM. ODM now and Jubilee play in the same league in terms of preparation for the party primaries. Because, again, how would you allow returning officers to be affiliated to one particular aspirant and you give them authorities? Because from some parts, especially in Kisii, where Professor Tumbo comes from, some of those returning officers had marked ballots in favor of one candidate. So you begin to wonder, in Kenya, do we actually have political parties? No, we don't. We have special purpose vehicles. But these special purpose vehicles, why can't they try to behave in a manner suggesting that, in fact, they respect democracy? And when you analyze the ODM nominations and you analyze the Jubilee nominations, you come to the conclusion that the aspirants, all of them are clever thieves. So now it depends on who is clever than the other. If you're clever than all the other aspirants, then you win that election.
It's politics of interest.
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
Let's take a look at the top page of the Sunday Nation. The inside story of Jubilee nominations mess. Among the highlights that they've put on the top page is that tough wars, interference, fight for tenders, and last-minute staff changes blamed for failed Friday primaries across the country. Of course, the president apologized to the party supporters with the promise of proper planning to ensure that the exercise is free, fair, and credible. And the ruling party has announced the new dates for the polls in counties from tomorrow to Wednesday. So days like tomorrow, we will be seeing counties like Nairobi hold their nomination exercise. But something very interesting here. Tough wars, interference, fight for tenders, and last-minute changes. Should we really be having such issues?
It's fight for tenders. Because you see, as we indicated earlier on, for Kenyans, our appetite for making money is so high that it shocks everybody. You want instant tea, you want instant coffee, and now you want instant riches from the electoral process. Because even part of the reason why IBC is in trouble is as soon as commissioners get appointed, they want to become principal suppliers. Part of the reason why we had a crisis in IBC during the last election is a number of commissioners were supplying transport services, logistics, and everything. So if a company owned by a commissioner doesn't deliver, there's no way the chief electoral officer can make a call. The same thing happened with Jubilee. The guys who are given the responsibility to deliver a free, fair, and credible election, but they don't care about that. They're saying, in wakati wa kura, in wakati wa kutengeneza pesa. So for them, priority is to make money, even if you're going to compromise the quality of the process.
I think.
Do you agree with him?
Yes, as far as that point is concerned, I agree with him, but I would like to extend it further. The ruling or the overarching interest in the political contest of this type is political advantage. Political advantage to enable you now and in the future to control power and control resources. So why I agree with him is because acquisition of financial resources in an electoral process in Kenya is a primary driver towards superiority. Secondly, I wanted to comment on the issue of the Jubilee nominations.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it from a somewhat different perspective. My belief is that the principles, however distant they attempted to be, each of them most likely had their agents trying to take advantage of the process on the ground. As a result, in some constituencies, some wards, they very frequently have a preferred candidate, but they don't, front him obviously.
Yeah.
Then what happens when feedback states that the candidate is not doing well, then traditionally the process is stalled, pole, until their person gains advantage or comes to the front. Now, this is particularly so in certain parts of central Kenya and most parts in the Rift Valley. I was in communication with some constituencies, and what I was getting is that in one constituency, a candidate favored by a particular principle was doing rather badly. So the idea was, we don't want that candidate to be defeated. The chance to stall the process so that if this thing doesn't work very well, we can get an opportunity to do a boardroom nomination.
So what you're saying is there is more to the failed Jubilee nominations than what meets the eye?
Yes, sure.
Do you think so, Brian?
But that's the nature of political parties and nominations, Akisa. We can't take it away from that. The fact, and I want to delve on two issues that you have raised from that excerpt.
Yes.
And this talks about the issues of, sudden change of the swap. I mean, in terms of swappings of the officials, where maybe Dismas Doti is going to administer as a presiding officer in polling station B, only to find himself in polling Z. I think that was strategic, first of all, and every party has its own strategic ways of handling issues. Maybe that was actually, to me, if I would be asked, was actually to avert any sort of compromise, because when somebody has stayed in a certain presiding station, is likely to be compromised before the actual nomination happens, and therefore they saw that, or they foresaw that at an earlier sort of stage, and maybe thought it would be wise to do a swap. Secondly, the issue of tenderpreneurs actually taking advantage of the whole process, or the issues of infighting within the party. I think that one we cannot again take it away from that, because every opportunity brings another opportunity for someone else, because the nominations and the politics is always a multifaceted sort of an arrangement where various stakeholders are all interested. There's one who is interested in clinching the party. There's another one who is interested in supplying something. There's another one who's interested in managing, the whole process. And therefore, all these kind of interests have to be sort of, have to converge at some point. And this convergence has to hit with some sort of dander that the result actually happens with this kind of confusion we are seeing. And therefore, the infightings and the underlying sort of machinations under the party, I think is something that perhaps is not, isolated to Jubilee alone. It is actually something that cuts across all the political parties in the country. And therefore, I think the biggest problem that Jubilee faced was mostly underestimating the whole process.
Yeah.
As Dismas said that the top brass in terms of Tuju and the company saying that they can only print according to what they had foreseen before that earlier nominations, people tend to turn out in low numbers, and that's the kind of estimate that they used. I think to them that's the most undoing thing that they did, if you may ask me, Akisa.
I do not subscribe to
Yes, yes.
I do not subscribe to that thinking. It was a damage control exercise.
Yeah.
If you look critically between the lines, the standard practice when you are going into an election or into any other project is that you plan at the optimum. If there are 1,000 voters, the minimum you can provide to start with is 1,000 ballot papers. Then
not 500.
Not 500.
That's why I said it was their undoing, actually.
Then you provide another 200 or 300
backup,
just in case there is an overflow. It's my sincere opinion that what actually happened was an attempt, one, to save money. So, in an attempt to save money, so that it could find to other channels,
not really.
people did not do what they're supposed to do. Secondly, I'm one of those who thinks fairly strongly that the Jubilee Secretariat did not develop a primary conducting framework so that you go from stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and in that there are sub-stages in each one.
So what, they were all over the place?
Yes, they were all over the place, serving vested interest here, there, everywhere. As the result, what the voter was looking for was not on offer. What you saw was what some of the aspirants plus the principals playing games along the line, and the voter ended up being victim. When two elephants fight, the grass suffers. That's what you saw.
Dismas, if at all you agree, first of all, do you agree with Professor?
There are two reasons as to why these party primaries collapsed in both political parties. Number one, the people who are managing the process, a number of them, their primary interest was to make money. If you are Raphael Tuju and you've been on all major TV stations saying we are producing a template, that we are going to teach Kenya and ODM a lesson on how to run party primaries,
Yes.
one would have expected that you've done the critical path analysis to be sure that what must we do for the election to be a success. And for election to be a success, we know democracy is expensive. You have 1,000 registered voters, you have to print 1,000 ballots. No two ways about it. Because if you don't have those 1,000 ballots, you are creating suspicion. And from insider information and reading the body language of the president and his deputy, for the first time you could see a president who is annoyed. And one can only imagine what happened inside in those rooms when there was nobody else. Because Jubilee says they've got a lot of money. They got about 800 million from the aspirants. Why would it be, why would you want to print 20% of the ballots? Why would you imagine it's only 20% voter turnout? You'd rather have 100%, you print 100% ballots, then the rest you can recycle for toilet paper or other stuff. But there's no way. Take a scenario, you go to a polling station, 1,000 registered voters, and then you have 300 ballots. So what happens to the rest? Is it first come, first served, or you tell people, hurry while stocks last, hurry while the ballots last, come you cast your ballots. And then obviously, number two, it would be very naive for us to imagine that every political party doesn't have a preferred candidates. And I think it's important for every elected leader in any political party to have a preferred candidates and even make them public, provided they do not compromise the quality of that operation. Like, for instance, that's what is happening in Kisii. The governor and some senators, they've got a list of preferred candidates. Those are the people who are given the opportunity to influence the nomination of the returning officers and presiding officers.
And on that point, sorry to cut you short, Dismas, when we take a look at what happened in the Rift Valley, Bomet County, Uasin Gishu County, and Kericho County, the elections, the nomination exercise was, nothing happened in those counties. Like at night, the aspirants in Bomet had already called off the exercise even before they begin at 5 a.m. the next morning. And a number of the people we were talking to and the aspirants were saying the deputy president is interfering. He has a list of his projects he wants to install on us, and we will not agree with that.
Now, that's a pregnant point. Let's go to Asingishu, where the president comes from.
Yes.
The governor, Mandago, the deputy president, yeah. The governor, Mandago, has been a personality you can almost describe as docile. You can easily say he's the chief sycophant to the deputy president. But for the first time on the nomination day, he comes to the streets, and I saw this on live TV, and I was shocked because he had a huge crowd. People were doing war cries. I wouldn't understand the local language, but from people who understand the language, they were saying it was a declaration of war. So many guys. And when all of them were standing in the streets, but when he came, at the flick of his fingers, everybody sat on the tarmac or squatted on the tarmac. And then he said, we want to have a free and fair party primary, but people from the deputy president's office are interfering with us.
Yeah.
And then when you read the subtext, he's speaking now not as a member of the Kalenjin community, but he's speaking as a Nandi, saying there's somebody from Keyo, there's somebody from Marakwet. We said to be, his name is Buzeki, the deputy president's business partner, who is being forced on us. And we are not going to allow this to happen. And then he was in the company of some sitting members from Nandi.
Yeah.
And now when you look at that, then a day before, you have Isaac Ruto joining NASA. And then Isaac Ruto now starts laughing off at Jubilee, saying, you guys, wait a minute. For the last 4 years, I've been telling you that the Jubilee party primaries will not be free and fair. I suspect wherever Isaac Ruto is right now is having the last laugh.
He actually held a rally in Eldoret that very day when the elections were clearly bungled.
Yeah. Now, the takeout from this, it has exposed the underbelly of the president and his deputy. And for the first time, you can see the deputy president is a shaken man. Because when you have a governor, we said to be docile, we said to be very loyal, all of a sudden, commanding the entire city and giving instructions and people following instructions, that's a very serious. And for the longest time, Makisa, we've indicated governors in Kenya are a threat to our national security. Because governors in Kenya have stolen a lot of resources, they've got a lot of money, and if you steal somebody's cow, it's very easy for you to slaughter and enjoy it as you so deem fit. Unlike when you've actually taken the pains to nurture the cow. So these guys have got a lot of disposable incomes, and they can do whatever they want. And I suspect the person who's really lost from the Jubilee party primaries is the deputy president. Because wherever he's seated, he's beginning to wonder, wait a minute, what gives Mandago the guts to look at me in the eye and accuse me? Because again, the president has not disassociated himself from those remarks. Because Mandago said there's a fellow by the name Farouk Kibet, another fellow by the name Ruben Maio. Those are the ones who have got the preferred list. And in the event, again, I don't know really whether the deputy president has got good advisors. Because now he has taken charge of the planning for the repeat exercise.
All right, dismiss.
What happens if the exercise is a failure?
That's enough. I think
what happens if the exercise is a failure?
Let's
all right,
not make it
dismiss.
one-sided.
Brian does not seem to agree with you.
Oh, yes. I think some of the sentiments are on the extreme. And I want just to delve on the issue of where he's actually saying that governors are a threat to security. I want to assure him that coming from the school of thought and from the practice that I do as a governance expert, I think devolution seems to be the best news that this country has ever achieved since independence. And actually going by the records, if you sample what we have actually been able to achieve for the last couple of years and what we have lost when we were in the wilderness at times of Kenyatta and Moi, I think these two are uncomparable, Akisa, if you may ask me. And therefore, I think we can only nurture devolution and maybe learn the ropes as we try. We also continue to implement. But again, I want also to go back to something that you had raised before in terms of, political parties have their own, favored choices in terms of candidates. I think we all have to appreciate that political parties normally, as I said, it's a multifaceted player sort of affair, where there are financiers, those who want to clinch the tickets, those who want to supply something, and etc., etc. And for instance, when you look at the person of Buzeki, whom I'm told is so much loaded that you can only want him to be on your side when it comes to politics. I think it is very hard to separate or to balance that act where you have a candidate here who is actually supporting you financially at the same time. While you're on the other side, you have another incumbent governor who has been actually brushing you on the wrong side. I'm actually wondering where this man has been referring this from, because time immemorial, we have seen Mandago actually brushing the DP in the wrong way. Take a look at the times of, the professor who had been transferred to Moi University. Yes. Mandago was on record openly, showing us that he does not really recognize the choices that have been imposed by the DP.
So will he be paying for his sins?
Absolutely. Now that's the word that I was looking for, Akisa. This is the time that is going to pay for it dearly.
Let
me make a clarification.
Quickly.
Sure.
Yeah, because I think Brian is misrepresenting me. I said governors, as they are today, that are a threat to national security.
How?
I haven't said devolution is a threat to national
Governors
security.
are champions.
Devolution is solid.
They are the custodians of devolution. Dismas.
I think, Kisa, there are 2 points here. Dismas is making an allegation that governors are a threat to national security because of their quote-unquote ill-gotten resources from their positions. All right? And Brian is making the point that governance, devolution has been...
the best thing that has happened to us as a country.
Now, those two, please don't mix the two. I want to deal with devolution. First thing is, devolution has taken place, all right? But at its infancy, it's been badly managed. As a result, probably 10 to 15% of the resources committed to devolution have gone to benefit the citizen. The rest has disappeared into governors and other supporters' pockets.
True.
From that perspective, devolution as a concept has been highly successful, but devolution as a practice at the moment
has been abused.
Is honestly is traumatized. The second point I would like to make is that when you look at these governors, they are students of national government. Most of them were people working at the national level and were given their kingship at the periphery.
Yeah.
So all we did was to create opportunities for them to do what they are doing, given human nature. I'm not approving that what they did is a good thing. Yeah. But once you get the resources, you will find, even you tomorrow, if you get 1 billion shillings, even the way you speak will change. The way you smile will change. Because there is a level of confidence that it brings about in your personality.
Sure.
3, there is something else that is, to me, very significant. There is this thing in our system that we are unwilling to follow our own rules. We make rules, we make arrangements, we make plans, but when it comes to implementing them, we behave like it's immaterial. You look at the way Parliament behaves, you look at the way the presidency behaves, you look at the way governors behave, we are basically, we are socially incompetent.
Yeah.
Emotionally, we are incompetent.
All right.
And I want to finish by saying this. It is extremely important, to realize that all these things that you are seeing, the mismanagement and everything, is not accidental. It's not accidental. It is all part and the process of getting advantage, unfair advantage. The ordinary citizen who expects to be given an opportunity to perform their patriotic duty is being deprived by vested interest. Yeah, that's really our problem.
So in essence, this party primaries, and as we head into the August 8th polls, governors, as you allege, will be using the resources they've stolen from the county governments to install themselves once again as governors for another 5 years.
There's an American saying, actually Victorian saying, "You pays the piper, calls the tune." Right now at the county levels, governors have got unlimited access to resources. As the professor has indicated, about 15% of the funds which go to the counties actually end up in development projects. The rest, there are so many tenders. The governors have become the chief suppliers again to the county government. So they've got a lot of resources. And since a number of them have I've got a list of preferred candidates because they want to maintain the status quo or maybe improve on their abilities to steal more. So they like to get a list of MPs, senators, and MCAs so that when they tell them jump, they don't ask why, they ask how high. And that's what is happening in Kisii, that's what is happening in Mombasa. I mean, you saw the other day a gentleman who used to work here, Mohammed.
Yes.
Shedding tears. He was hoping that if he goes to ODM, it's going to be a bed of roses. And he's just been surprised that, wait a minute, there's a kingmaker in Mombasa that you have to go and beg and tell him, I want to be part of your team. There's no way you would expect that, say, Governor Ongwae or Joe or Nyagarama are seated preaching in their offices saying, let the people decide. They've got their own team of preferred candidates. Now the tragedy is when Mr. Raila Odinga sits at his office preaching, and he doesn't intervene. And there's a lot of noise coming from all these, the aspirants. The problem is when Tuju comes and he tells us, I'm going to organize a military precision-like polls. And we are all waiting. And what happens the entire day? It's all shambolic. And I don't think shambolic is the right word because this is trauma. Now the nation has been traumatized. We may need another healing process. Because you can imagine people wake up early in the morning, say at 4 o'clock. They make tea and githeri. They go to the polling station by 6 o'clock. And 10 hours later, they have not voted. So in the evening, Tuju says, wait a minute, we have an issue with the power and safety. Everybody go back home. And yet, the same government has told us every primary school has got power. So there's not going to be a crisis in voting. So for me, I really think that our national leadership, all political parties, they owe Kenyans an apology. Because, for poor Wanjiko, who believes that if I'm a member of Jubilee, let me go and exercise my rights. So you sacrifice the entire day. You stop picking your tea, your cows, you go vote, but your vote doesn't count.
So bottom line on this, I want to ask to close on this, but on devolution and the governors down at the county levels, do we expect that they would largely influence the local politics at the county levels?
They will, but sometimes we say, the will of the people sometimes cannot be defeated. We have seen some pockets where some governors have also lost. Look at Taita Taveta. Maruti is home and dry now, waiting to go either as an independent candidate or to support whoever will be Mwandengu for that matter. But I also want to say that we have some loopholes in the law as far as devolution is concerned, Kisa, where you realize that governors still are enjoying, as much as we are still in the electioneering period, we need to have a platform where governors are not able to use the resources that they have or that they are custodians of. Look at the counties. They are in control of millions and billions of money in terms of cash and resources, vehicles, infrastructure, and even the personnel, because most of them are using even the existing personnel, the working staff, to campaign for them. And therefore, this kind of undue advantage that they normally have over the others, I think, should be checked in terms of adjusting the law somehow to ensure that they are not custodian of these resources by the time electioneering period starts officially. And because this seems to be something that perhaps we overlooked in our constitution, and we overlooked it in the sense that when you look at the spirit of devolution, it had to be detached seriously from the issues of politics of the day. We needed this to be a standalone sort of issue where...
Unfortunately, it has been largely political.
But
absolutely.
Would you say the same of
we have 2 minutes. I would let the professor...
Would you say the same of the national government? That now President Kenyatta needs to stop using state resources
not really.
campaigns? Or is it going to be limited to governors?
No. Look here, Dismas. I want you to take this as a serious issue from me. Look here. Look at the roles that the president takes in terms of being the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, in terms of being the chair of the security apparatus in this country, in terms of being the chair or in control of all those sectors which have not been devolved. Devolved.
We have 48 governments.
No, look here, Dismas, with all due respect, you cannot let the president, or you cannot detach the president as the commander-in-chief from these kind of roles simply because we are going for an election.
All right, Brian, let the professor have the last word on this.
It's all right.
Actually, what these two gentlemen are arguing about is about incumbency. Incumbency, whether at national or at county levels. Incumbency is a major factor in determining the political direction for the country and the county. As you have rightly stated, the president has all these at his disposal. That's why I sometimes want to cry when you hear him saying, "Nitafanya nini?" Right? Two, the governors, in addition, actually they don't have as huge a machinery as the president. The only thing they really enjoy is the recklessness in access.
What would be huge than money, Prof?
Just a moment.
All right.
Can I tell you, there
Okay.
are things that are bigger than money. Money is one. Two is power. Power, in other words, you've got instruments that allow you to do certain things.
But can you have that without money?
The guy without money,
Good question.
the guy with the money can't do. And then there is the other thing. When you have instruments of power, it is easy to manipulate them to create an impression of things really that are non-existent, but which are credible. Now, in this whole process, in my view, what you're talking about is what should have been.
Sure.
At the moment, the scenario is the governors are going to play their card, their hand, as well as they can to gain advantage.
All right.
To some of them, it's going to be catastrophic because some of them are going to end up alienating people that could actually have helped them to survive.
All right. Let's now take a short break. We'll be back with the main topics here on KTN Sunday Edition. We'd love to hear from you. You can tweet us at KTN News at